It was close to midnight when I stopped for gas on my way home from work. The station was nearly empty, just one other car parked across the lot under a flickering light. I was half awake, scrolling through my phone as I waited for the tank to fill, when suddenly someone grabbed my arm. I jumped and spun around, ready to yell, but it wasn't some random guy. It was a woman. She looked terrified, her face pale, her hands shaking. She said in a low voice, "Don't go home tonight. Stay anywhere else." My first thought was that she was crazy or confused. I pulled my arm back and asked, "What are you talking about? Why?" She glanced over her shoulder like someone was watching and whispered, "Check your security cameras." Then she walked away fast, disappearing behind the corner of the store before I could even react. I stood there in the cold, heart pounding, trying to understand what had just happened. When I finally got back into my car, I opened my home security app, and every camera feed was offline. They hadn't recorded anything for the past 3 hours. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from, because what happened after that still gives me chills every time I think about it. My name is Hannah Reeves, and I live in a small town just outside Richmond, Virginia. I'm 28 years old, a single mom, and I work the late shift at a local diner. Most nights, I don't get home until almost midnight. It's not the easiest life, but I manage. My world mostly revolves around my 7-year-old son, Noah. We live in a small one-story house on the edge of town. It's nothing fancy, a few creaky steps on the porch, chipped paint on the mailbox, and a backyard that's more weeds than grass. But it's ours. After my husband left, I promised Noah I'd make this house feel safe again. That's why I had security cameras installed, one at the front door, one in the living room, and one in the hallway near his room. Knowing I could check on him from my phone whenever I was at work gave me peace of mind. My brother Daniel lives about 20 minutes away. He's the protective type, always reminding me to lock up and keep a bat by the door. He means well, but sometimes he treats me like I'm still his kid sister. Every few days he'll text, "Everything good? Cameras still on?" I'd always reply, "Yes, still working." I thought that meant I was safe. That week had been long. The diner was short-staffed, and my shift kept running late. By the time I closed up that night, I was exhausted, ready to go home, crawl into bed, and forget about everything. Noah was staying at my mom's house for the weekend, so I planned to enjoy one quiet night to myself. The gas station I stopped at was the same one I always used, open 24 hours, well lit, right off the main road. It never felt unsafe before. That's what made what happened so strange. When the EI woman grabbed me, my first instinct was to pull away. She wasn't threatening, just terrified. Her voice cracked when she told me not to go home. Her eyes looked wild, but not in a crazy way, more like someone who'd just seen something they couldn't explain. I wanted to ask her more, but she was gone before I could say anything. I stood there for a long time, trying to calm down. The sound of the gas pump finishing made me jump. I looked around the parking lot. No one else was there now, not even her car. When I got back into mine, I locked the doors, started the engine, and opened my security app just to reassure myself. The feed was blank. Every camera showed a red offline icon. It said they'd lost connection at 9:12 p.m. I checked the time. It was 12:07, 3 hours of silence. I tried refreshing the app, thinking maybe it was a Wi-Fi issue. Nothing. My chest tightened as I thought about what she said. "Check your security cameras." I started calling myself crazy. Maybe she was just some random woman having a breakdown. But deep down, something about the way she looked at me, like she knew me, wouldn't leave my mind. The drive home felt longer than usual. Every passing streetlight made my nerves jump. When I turned onto my road, the first thing I noticed was that my porch light was off. I always left it on for myself when coming home late. I slowed down in front of the house, gripping the steering wheel. The front door looked slightly open, just enough to see the darkness inside. I sat there in my car, engine running, staring at that door. My cameras were off, the light was out, and now the door wasn't even closed. Something inside me said not to go in, But at that moment, I still didn't realize how right that stranger had been. I sat in my car for almost a full minute, staring at my front door, hoping I was just tired and seeing things. The porch light had always been my small sign of comfort, the one thing that made coming home after midnight a little less lonely. But that night, it was out. The house looked completely dark, like no one had lived there for years. My hand hovered over the door handle, but something deep inside told me not to move. The stranger's warning echoed in my mind. Don't go home tonight. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was overreacting. Maybe the light bulb burned out. Maybe I didn't close the door properly earlier. I checked my phone again, hoping to see the camera feeds reconnect. Still nothing. 3 red icons, 3 black screens, 3 hours of silence. I called my brother, Daniel. He picked up on the 3rd ring, his voice rough with sleep. Hannah, what's wrong? There's something weird at the house, I said quietly. My cameras went offline, and my front door's open. He paused. Are you inside? No, I'm in my car. Then don't go in. Stay where you are. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead before I could answer. I locked the doors and turned off my headlights. My street was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that makes you hyper-aware of every sound. I could hear the wind brushing against the trees and the faint hum of a streetlight flickering down the block. My eyes stayed fixed on the open door. Every few seconds, I thought I saw movement, a shadow, maybe, or just my imagination feeding off fear. When Daniel's truck finally pulled up behind me, I jumped in relief. He climbed out, yawning, wearing a jacket over his pajama shirt. You really shouldn't scare me like this, he said, but his voice softened when he saw my face. All right, stay here. I'll check it out. Before I could argue, he was already walking up the driveway, flashlight in hand. I watched his beam of light sweep across the porch and through the door. He called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" No answer. He pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. I could hear the faint sound of his boots creaking against the wooden floor. My heart raced as I waited, watching the doorway like it was the entrance to something alive. After what felt like forever, Daniel came back out, his expression tense. "No one's here," he said. "But you're not crazy. Someone's been inside." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" He pointed to the ground. "The back window latch is broken, like someone pried it open, and your living room rug's moved. Did you leave it like that?" I shook my head. "No, it was straight this morning," he sighed. "All right, we're calling the police." While he made the call, I stood at the edge of the driveway, staring at my house. For the first time, it didn't feel like home. It felt like a place that had been watched, touched, by someone else. I couldn't stop thinking about the woman at the gas station. How did she know? How could she possibly have known something was wrong before I did? When the police arrived, 2 officers went through every room with flashlights. One of them, Officer Lane, recognized me from the diner. "You're the one who works nights, right?" he asked. I nodded. "Do you think someone broke in?" He exchanged a look with his partner. "There are signs of entry, but nothing stolen. Usually, when a house gets hit, people take electronics or money. Whoever this was, they didn't want things. They wanted to be inside." The words made my chest tighten. I looked around the living room. Nothing seemed missing, but something felt different, like the air itself carried someone else's presence. Officer Lane advised me not to stay there that night. "Go to your brother's house," he said. "We'll keep a patrol nearby, just in case." Daniel didn't even let me argue. He grabbed a few of my clothes, locked the house, and drove me back to his place. I sat in the passenger seat, gripping my phone the entire ride. When we got there, he tried to lighten the mood. "You've probably just been working too hard," he said. "Maybe some kids broke in for fun." I wanted to believe him, but something about this didn't feel random. The door wasn't kicked in. The locks weren't broken. It was too careful. Later that night, after Daniel went to bed, I sat awake on the couch and opened my security app again. The cameras were still offline, but I noticed something new. A small message under the feed that said, "Last active, 9:12 p.m. That was exactly when my shift ended. A chill went down my spine. Someone had turned them off right before I left work, meaning whoever it was knew my schedule. They had planned it. I tried to think back. I hadn't told anyone where I lived besides my family, my coworker, and a few regular customers at the diner. None of them seemed like the type. But then I remembered something else. A man who had started coming in the last couple of weeks. He never talked much, just sat in the same corner booth, ordered coffee, and left big tips. The last night I worked, he had been there until closing, watching me as I cleaned the counter. When I locked up, he was still sitting in his car across the street. At that moment, I knew this wasn't a random break-in. Whoever had been in my house was waiting for me to come home. And if it hadn't been for that stranger at the gas station, I would have walked right through that open door into whatever was waiting inside. The next morning, I woke up on Daniel's couch feeling like I hadn't slept at all. My mind kept replaying the image of my front door half open, the porch light off, and the cameras offline. It didn't make sense, but the fear was real. I couldn't just sit there and pretend it was over. I needed answers. When Daniel came into the kitchen, I was already dressed. "Where are you going?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "I'm going to the security company. I need to know why my cameras went down," I said, tightening my jacket. He frowned. "You should let the police handle that. You don't know who you're dealing with. I can't just wait." Whoever was in my house, they knew my schedule. They knew exactly when I wasn't home. That's not random. Daniel sighed, grabbed his keys, and said, "Then I'm coming with you." At the small security office downtown, the technician, a young guy named Mark, looked at my account. He typed quickly, his expression shifting from bored to serious. "That's strange," he murmured. "What is?" I asked. He turned the screen toward me. "Your cameras didn't just lose power. Someone disconnected them from the network remotely. It looks like someone logged into your system from an external device and disabled them at exactly 9:12 p.m. My chest tightened. "Can you see where the login came from?" He nodded, clicking through more data. "It was from an IP address registered just a few miles away. Same area as your house." Daniel leaned forward. "Can you tell us who owns that address?" Mark shook his head. "I can't legally access that, but the police can. I can print the log for you." He handed me a paper with the timestamps and a note. "Manual disconnect detected." It wasn't a glitch. It was deliberate. On the drive home, Daniel was silent. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Finally, he said, "This wasn't random, Hannah. Someone was watching you." I stared out the window, trying to make sense of it. I kept thinking about the woman at the gas station, how she knew to warn me. Her fear wasn't about me being in danger in general. It was specific. It was urgent. She knew something about my house before I did. When we got back to Daniel's place, Officer Lane called. "We found footprints behind your house," he said. "They lead from the backyard to the woods. And there's something else. A set of keys was left on your porch. Do they belong to you?" "No," I said. "I've never seen them. They're old, like house keys from an older lock. We'll run prints and get back to you." That night, I couldn't stop thinking. I opened my phone and scrolled through old footage from the week before. Nothing unusual. Me coming home, Noah running through the yard, Daniel fixing the porch steps. But then, in one clip from a few days ago, I saw something that made my stomach twist. It was a reflection in the living room window, a faint silhouette of a person standing just outside, watching. The image was too blurry to make out a face, but it was definitely a man. The date stamp said it was recorded at 11:47 p.m., right after I'd fallen asleep on the couch that night. I froze, my heart pounding. Someone had been outside, watching through the glass. I called Daniel into the room and showed him the video. He cursed under his breath. "That's it. You're not going back there. Not until we figure this out." But I couldn't stay away. That was my home. My son's things were there. I needed to understand who had done this and why. The next morning, after dropping Noah at my mom's, I decided to drive back to the gas station. Maybe the woman who warned me would be there. I didn't even know what I'd say, but I needed to see her again. The same cashier from that night was behind the counter. I asked, "Hey, was there a woman here 2 nights ago? Mid-50s, dark coat, gray hair, maybe in a blue car?" He frowned. "Not that I remember. I was on shift all night. You were the only woman who came in around that time." That can't be right, I said, my voice trembling. She was right outside by the pumps. He shook his head. There was no one else. The cameras don't show anyone out there either. You want to check? He pulled up the footage from that night. I leaned over the counter, eyes fixed on the screen. It showed me walking to my car, putting gas in, scrolling my phone, but there was no one near me. No woman. No one grabbing my arm. My mouth went dry. That's impossible, I whispered. She touched me. She spoke to me. The cashier looked uncomfortable. Maybe she was parked farther away? We can't see the whole lot, but I could feel it. Something wasn't adding up. When I got back to Daniel's, I told him what I saw. He rubbed his forehead, trying to make sense of it. So she's not on the camera? Maybe she left before you looked? No, I said firmly. I saw her. She grabbed me. She warned me. I'm not imagining it. That night, Officer Lane called again. We found fingerprints on your back door, he said. They belonged to someone named Eli Warner. I froze. That name made my blood run cold. Eli Warner, my ex-husband, the man I'd left 3 years ago after he started following me, showing up at my job, calling nonstop. He'd been arrested for breaking into my car after the divorce. I had a restraining order against him. I hadn't heard from him in over a year, until now. I hung up and sat in silence, my whole body shaking. Suddenly, everything fit together. The cameras going dark, the door being open, the feeling of being watched. Eli knew my schedule, my address, my routines, and if that stranger hadn't stopped me at the gas station that night, I might have walked straight into him waiting for me inside my own home. I sat frozen on Daniel's couch after Officer Lane's call, the name echoing in my head like a bell I couldn't silence. Eli Warner, my ex-husband, the man I thought I'd escaped for good. For years, he had made my life a quiet kind of nightmare, the kind that doesn't leave bruises but lives in your chest. The calls in the middle of the night, the way he'd show up outside my work, smiling like nothing was wrong. When the police finally arrested him, I thought that chapter was closed. But now I knew it had only been waiting to reopen. Daniel's face went pale when I told him. You mean Eli? The same guy who... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. He stood up, grabbed his phone, and started pacing. We're not waiting around for him to come back. I'm calling the police again. But Officer Lane had already texted. We're bringing him in for questioning tonight. My hands shook as I read it. The thought of Eli being close, possibly inside my house just days ago, made me sick. While the police handled things, I couldn't sit still. I pulled out my laptop, opened every old folder, every saved file, looking for anything that might show he had found me again. I hadn't thought about it before, but last month I'd gotten 2 missed calls from an unknown number. I ignored them. Then a small package arrived at my door. No return address, just a plain brown box. Inside was a photo of Noah and me at the park, taken from a distance. I'd told myself it was probably some mistake, maybe an old friend who'd sent it. But now I knew the truth. Eli had been watching us again. A few hours later, Officer Lane called back. We found him, he said. He's being questioned now. You might want to hear what he told us. My stomach turned. What did he say? He admitted to being near your house, but he claims he didn't mean to hurt you. He said he just wanted to check on you and his son. I gripped the phone tighter. He doesn't have a son anymore, I said through clenched teeth. He gave that up when he walked out. Lane hesitated. There's something else. He said someone warned you not to go home. He seemed surprised, almost scared when we mentioned that part. That caught my attention. He knew about her? He said he saw a woman at the gas station that night, watching him, said she looked familiar, but he couldn't place her. According to him, when she realized what he was doing, she followed you to warn you. I sat there in silence, unable to speak, so she was real. The woman who grabbed me wasn't a ghost or a hallucination. She was someone who had known Eli. Officer Lane continued. We're checking into who she might be. He said she lived next door to him in his old apartment complex. Her name might be Linda Carson. That name hit me like a jolt. I remembered it. He used to mention a woman named Linda, an older neighbor who helped him when he was struggling. I remembered him saying she was kind, that she understood him. The same woman who had once felt sorry for him was now the one who saved me. but what she'd seen that night must have terrified her enough to act. The police searched Eli's car and found tools, gloves, and a small knife in the trunk. He'd parked a few blocks from my street. The plan was clear. He'd been waiting for me to come home. If that woman hadn't stopped me, I would have walked right into him. Later that night, Officer Lane visited Daniel's house. He handed me a small evidence bag. Inside was a pair of old keys. "We found these in his pocket," he said. "They match your house." My mouth went dry. "He still had them." Lane nodded. "He must have made a copy before you changed the locks. That's how he got in." Daniel cursed under his breath and slammed his hand on the counter. "He could have killed her, Lane." The officer's expression softened. "He won't get the chance now. He's being held without bail." When he left, I went outside to breathe. The air felt cold and sharp, but for the first time in days, it felt real. I looked up at the sky, thinking about the woman, Linda Carson. I didn't know where she was or why she'd risked warning me, but I owed her everything. A few days later, I called the police station to ask if they had found her. The officer on the phone hesitated before saying, "She came by earlier. She didn't want to talk to the press, but she asked if you and your son were safe. She said she was just glad she was there when you needed help. Can you tell me where she lives?" I asked. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said. "She moved out of her apartment this morning. Didn't leave a forwarding address." For a long moment, I didn't say anything. Then I whispered, "Tell her thank you, if you ever see her again." That night, when I finally returned home with Daniel by my side, the house felt different. The lights were on again. The locks were replaced. The cameras glowed blue, all online. But even with the safety restored, I couldn't shake the thought that a stranger had seen danger coming before I did, that she had risked everything to stop it. I walked through each room slowly, feeling the silence that once terrified me now become a reminder of survival. I paused by Noah's door, watching him sleep peacefully, unaware of how close we'd come to losing everything. And as I turned off the hallway light, I said a quiet prayer for the woman who had whispered the words that saved my life. "Don't go home tonight." If she hadn't found the courage to say that, this story might have ended very differently. 2 weeks later, life started to feel almost normal again, or at least as close to normal as it could after everything that happened. The house no longer felt like a trap, though it still carried shadows of that night. I replaced every lock, installed a new alarm system, and moved Noah's bed closer to my room. Every sound still made me jump, but fear wasn't the loudest thing in me anymore. Gratitude was. Eli was still in custody, facing charges for breaking his restraining order, trespassing, and attempted assault. Officer Lane called every few days with updates. Each time he sounded a little more relieved, like he too was glad the story hadn't ended worse. "You're lucky," he said once. "That woman, Linda Carson, she saved your life. Lucky." That word stayed in my mind, because none of it felt like luck. It felt like something else, something between warning and fate. The police had tried to contact Linda again, but she disappeared. She didn't have any family nearby, and the apartment she'd been living in was suddenly vacant. Her landlord said she left quietly. No forwarding address, no number, just a note that said, "I had to make things right." I thought about that line more than I should have. Make things right. What did that mean? Did she feel guilty for not stopping Eli sooner? Or had she known what he was capable of all along? The idea that she had been part of his life before, had once cared for him, made her warning even more powerful. She could have ignored what she saw. She could have looked the other way, like so many others did when Eli started losing control years ago. But she didn't. She came to find me, a stranger, and in doing so, she gave me another chance to live. I often wondered how she knew where I'd be that night. Maybe she followed him. Maybe she saw something on the cameras near the gas station. Or maybe she just listened to her gut. Whatever it was, she didn't hesitate. And because of that, Noah still had a mother. The first time I brought Noah back home after it all happened, he noticed something was different. He walked around the living room, glancing at the new locks and the cameras. "Are we safe now, Mom?" he asked, his voice small and curious. I smiled and knelt beside him. "We are, baby. I promise." He looked at the camera light blinking on the wall and said, "Can she see us now?" I frowned. "Who?" "The nice lady," he said. "The one who helped you at the gas station." I froze. What do you mean? She was in my dream, he said simply. She told me you'd come back safe. She said she's watching over us. He ran off to play before I could say anything, but his words stayed with me. Maybe it was just a dream. Or maybe, in some strange, quiet way, she really was still watching. Over the next few days, I focused on rebuilding the little routines that made our lives feel stable again. Daniel came by often, fixing the fence, installing motion lights, refusing to let me be alone for long. My mom helped me organize the kitchen and threw out anything that reminded me of Eli. It felt cleansing, like each small change was a way of taking my space back. But even as things calmed down, the memory of that night remained sharp. The empty gas station, the grip on my arm, the trembling voice that said, "Don't go home tonight." It had sounded crazy in the moment, but now those words carried the weight of everything I'd almost lost. Sometimes I drive by that gas station on my way home from work. It looks exactly the same. Same flickering light, same quiet emptiness. But now, every time I stop for gas, I look around carefully, not out of fear, but out of awareness. I learned something that night, that safety isn't just about locks or cameras. It's about paying attention, listening to the signs, trusting when something feels wrong, even if you can't explain why. A few nights ago, I left a small note taped near the pump where she stopped me. It said, "Thank you for saving me. Wherever you are, I'll never forget." I don't know if she'll ever see it, but leaving it there felt right, like closing a chapter that had nearly ended before it began. Since then, I've started sleeping through the night again. I check the cameras less often. The fear doesn't live in me anymore. It visits sometimes, but it doesn't stay. What stays instead is a deep understanding that there are still good people in this world, people who act when they see danger, even when no one would believe them. When I think about it now, the most chilling part isn't that Eli tried to come back. It's that I almost didn't believe the warning that saved me. I almost brushed it off as the ramblings of a stranger. If I'd ignored her, my son might have lost his mother that night. Now, I teach Noah something I wish I'd learned sooner, to trust his instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. You don't need proof to protect yourself. Sometimes, listening to fear is the smartest thing you can do. One quiet evening, as the sun went down and the house filled with soft light, I sat on the porch and looked out at the empty street. The air was still, calm, and peaceful. I whispered a quiet thank you to the woman I might never see again. Wherever she is, I hope she knows she didn't just save one life that night. She saved a family. If you made it to the end of this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. And remember this, sometimes the smallest act of courage, even from a stranger, can change everything.